Hi, everybody else. Nice to see names, if not faces. You're welcome to jump on camera if you're feeling friendlier. This one aims to be a discussion. So, I mean, I know you all would really love to hear me lecture. You're probably pretty excited to sit still for another 50 minutes. But this one I'm hoping is actually an interactive discussion about how we can change the campus in some pretty fascinating ways. So feel feel brave enough to be on camera, great. If not, feel free to unmute your mic whenever you want to chime in. But this one is definitely aimed at being interactive. If you can see up on my screen, we're going to run a small little online quiz as we go along. There is a website called Socrative. So if you feel like jumping in, you're welcome to. You go to socrative.com and then there's a login and you click that. And then you click student login. You don't have to create an account or anything. You just have to go on there, and we're going to have a couple questions that will start to track a little bit of data, because as everybody who's talked to me about accreditation knows, I'm all about trying to capture some of the brilliant things we're doing, not just discuss them. So we're going to use that one, and just know that that's available to you. And I'll leave it up for a minute so you can kind of play around with the technology for a second. But as you guys kind of go through the login, if you're interested, I named this the Idea Lab because I'm hoping that we create an Idea Lab. We have an administration, everybody knows, that's nimble and innovative and seeking out new opportunities across the campus in order to help us grow and take advantage of the marvelous opportunities that this community has. And part of the way that they are doing that, one is that they asked me to be the accreditation chair. So as the accreditation chair, I'm wandering around campus looking for ways to help us document all the things that we're doing. So as we get ready for the next big round of reporting, that's my big goal, is to go around and document how well everybody's doing, just so people have some kind of idea of what accreditation's process is. Accreditation, we go through essentially and document everything for an outside accreditor to show that we're doing everything that college should do. We are following research practices, we're tracking, we're setting strategic goals, we're following them, we're doing all the industry supported practices. And just so you know, in terms of timing, that this year, 2021, is the year for us to document everything about governance, and that we'll turn in a report for the NWCCU. They're gonna see the first report from us on that in 2022. So we have 1 year to document all the splendid things that we're doing for governance. And then we have another about 10 months after that we are gonna really finish the research documentation for everything we do about institutional effectiveness and student learning. So in the next 18 months or so, you're gonna see this lovely face a lot as it chases you around campus trying to get you to document things and to show you, to make sure that we have everything in a row to show off what a stellar institution we are. But I wanted to show you this, and it's the reason that I'm pulled you in today. So the President's Advisory Council decided to set an objective for 2021. And one of the objectives that they decided to set was that they are going to strengthen the feedback channels at CEI. And when I talk about feedback channels, I'm going to show you this model. So essentially, this is our governance structure of CEI, which may or may not be apparent to people if you haven't seen a chart like this. But we have the Board of Trustees, for which we're thankful that we have a member of our boards in our meeting. So thanks, Scott. And the Board of Trustees is Park Price. He delegates authority to President Amon in order to accomplish all the things of the college. And in support of that, we have the President's Advisory Council and the Executive Council, which serves to distribute information past there. We have all these different organizations that exist on this campus as ways to give feedback back up through the chain. That as we talked to PAC, that we said, hey, we have a lot of distribution methods that go out, and we'd like to strengthen the input that is coming back. So we have institutional organizations that are present, but that are not being fully utilized. And we want to talk today about how can we utilize essentially the brains in this small chat room and the brains across campus better, so that as we create a strategic future for CEI, and we really think through all the different opportunities that we can capitalize on, that we use all the brain power across this campus. We have an infinite range of abilities and competencies and skills and talents and research sets that lay waste if we don't grab hold of them and create feedback channels to give them back. So today is going to be an exploratory way to kind of start diving into the questions of how do we best tap into the brains on this campus or in our community. So as we think through that, one of the things that we had talked about is that we would create a year zero. And year zero is essentially a year of exploration across campus to say, I'll ask all the big questions now that we are 3 years old. Does our mission fit us well? Do the core themes fit us well? Are we meeting our students' expectations? Are we creating obstacles for our students that we could eliminate if we just ask the right people the right questions? We're going to ask things like, as a professional group of people, do you feel like you're professionally supported, and could we change something to make that a better support system? Could we chase different metrics?
I'm sorry to interrupt your flow. Could you go back to the other slide just for a second? Because I have a question there.
This one?
So your brown octagon right there. Is that a person?
Well, that is something we are still debating.
Oh, okay. We don't know if that's a position or a certain person or what yet, right?
We're still, that's part of the actual mechanics, Byron, that I'm hoping that we can kind of use this group of brains and others to help us figure out. Byron, what do you think? Do you think we need a person that sits in the middle of all those? Or do you think we could establish other communication channels, and this is to everybody, where we could feed those back up through the chains effectively enough?
So that's a good question.
For a long time.
It could be Amanda, for example, who could just be the point where everybody provides their information, and she feeds it back to President's Council and President. Sometimes I wonder if it's not Rick right now, where people just go directly to Rick.
That's probably not efficient over the long term.
Since my name was mentioned, when I first saw this, or maybe when I was speaking with you, Amy, or in a PAC meeting, I don't remember where I first saw this, honestly. As I was, and perhaps we're talking about this in a later slide, I kind of was like, oh, wait, this is me. I'm a part of PAC, I'm a part of EC. Part of my job is to deal with the trustees, or I'm a liaison with the trustees. The only part, and I'm sure you're getting to this, Amy, is that we're going to increase currently, for instance, if you're a part of PAC, you don't officially liaise with like the student senate. So we would be increasing that, like if that dark brown was me, and I would need to start doing that. That's something that I don't do. But yeah, Byron, I looked at that and I was like, oh, we're expanding my job, or we're like formalizing part of my job description here.
Your life is expanding.
Sorry, Byron, go ahead.
It was a joke. I just said her life is expanding.
And are you
we're just changing my shape, I think.
More sides, and you get an octagon this time.
It's a stop sign, man. You used to stop everything. No, just kidding.
I think when we talked about it before, because we were talking about the lines, the one thing we realized was that, because I sit in with PAC and the EC, the lines didn't really work for me, but we were like, that's a problem for down the line, not today.
For sure.
So regardless of who's there, I like the idea, because all those different, on the left side there, all those entities need a formal way to pass information back and forth. And I don't know that we've really clearly established that up to this point. So whoever it is, I think it's a great idea. And you called it the coordinator. So obviously that position doesn't make decisions. They just, they're the focal point for the information, and so that it comes in and then it gets redistributed to either Rick or PAC or EC, but probably to Rick and then back down to President's Council or executive, you know, but somebody has to decide, well, okay, we got this information from faculty senate, who needs to get it, and what do we do with that information?
For sure.
And same with all of them. So anyway, I don't know if I'm sorry that I interrupted your flow.
No, not at all.
But it's we will have to come back to that at some point and make a decision there.
For sure. And it's something that is, well, we can jump ahead to it. As Amanda alluded, we'll just hit there now, Amanda. One of the things that PAC decided was that one of the ways to strengthen the feedback channels would be to strengthen those organizations that are listed on the left-hand side, so that they could strengthen Faculty Senate, strengthen Staff Senate. Academic Standards Committee, probably not so much. That one has well-established channels back and forth, but certainly needs to stay right where it is. The Student Senate there, and then the question mark boxes of the different ways that we could open up feedback channels across campus that I haven't thought of. So we're going to talk through a couple suggestions that we came up with, but it might be better just to jump ahead first to talk about how we had talked about strengthening the Faculty and Staff Senate first. So
one,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. One quick thing to clarify. So Rick has pointed out on a number of different occasions the difference between a shared governance and a participatory governance.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're looking at is a participatory governance.
Right.
The president is still the president and has, ultimate responsibility. The board of trustees still have their particular roles and missions. This is a way for constituent groups around the campus to participate and to share ideas and proposals and thoughts in the governance of the campus.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's just a way to participate in it rather than a true shared governance. The Faculty Senate would have a vote, where in a participatory governance, they have input and feedback, but they don't vote in the same kind of ways. And at the moment, speaking to like the Staff Senate president, for example, it sounded like the meetings were not quite solidified, particularly in COVID, that they had gotten a little fuzzy and that not particularly well attended. When I spoke to Matt Birch about it, they had two faculty that attended the previous Faculty Senate meeting. So both saying, hey, that they exist, but not that they're particularly well supported. And so one of the ways that we had talked about driving more support into those and to show administrative support for those organizations would be to ask people in their annual review that comes up in April to set participating in those different methods across campus as a professional development goal, not a requirement, not something that is weighted in their professional development, their professional evaluation, but just as a way to show participation across campus and to give a goal, a professional development goal that the administration would actively support and provide means to do, which is one of the things that accreditation looks at, is does the administration actually support their initiatives with some kind of skin in the game, essentially? Did they put out something that shows that they want support, not just did they speak support? So one of the ways that they talked about it was to earmark different ways of time, mark pieces of time that everyone across campus could participate in a couple of different ways. And we're going to talk about those in just a second, but I'll give you a preview anyway right now. One of them is to say, hey, you could set a goal to participate actively in the Faculty or Staff Senate. Another way that we are looking at is creating an online or a small group discussions across campus, that we would place you into small groups and you discuss things, so that people who are perhaps not as comfortable in a large group discussion like the Faculty Senate would have small groups where they could focus their attention, and that every single person across campus would be offered an hour per month out of their normal workday. So an hour of paid time, no matter which department that they're in, that they would have an hour set aside for them to participate in those small group discussions. And that for faculty on contract where that might not quite work the same way, that each of the deans agreed that they would set aside time within their normal meeting schedules where they usually meet with their faculty in order to allow faculty to attend those things, so that faculty and or the deans and administration as a whole would set aside time for every person on campus to participate in one of those forums. What do you guys think of that as a general theory?
Amy, this is Cal. I have a comment, not an answer to your question, but
That's all right.
by what you said, the objective is to strengthen the channels for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking if somebody asked me in the future, so that's a good objective, but what's the goal of that objective? And what's the expectation we're going to create in strengthening those feedback channels? Because sometimes I've seen, there's a desire to strengthen feedback and you get a lot of feedback. And then the question is, what are you going to do with it?
Oh, for sure.
Because it somewhat creates an expectation of the people you're asking for feedback. Like on the left-hand side of that view graph of, okay, if we strengthen the feedback, what are you going to do about it? What can we expect you're going to do about it? So it's just a question.
No, and actually, yeah, let me show you an answer. So this is where.
Can I add something that Cal had said before we move on?
Go ahead.
Curiously enough, and this is John Detweiler, I was looking at the governance coordinator position, and I'm really glad Byron brought it up because to me, every single occurrence of a problem in any field I've ever had before has been blamed on, in part, communication. To me, this governance coordinator is a huge job, especially if it goes to Cal's comment about a goal. If there is going to be an effective liaise between the left and the right side, and apparently that's the terms we're using, even though I don't think it's apt.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think this particular brown spot should be taken lightly, and I certainly shouldn't. I wouldn't like to see Amanda be strapped with it, because not only is it a huge addition to her work base practices, if it's going to be done with Cal's goals in mind of what are we going to accomplish, we may as well make it significant enough to be effective. It's nice to have this chart, but if we don't put every energy we have into making that brown spot efficient and really serve a purpose, then the goals won't even matter.
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree. And let me show you where we're hoping to go with those, to show you that it's not going to be a completely unstructured, just, hey, let's make things stronger discussion. The point of a year zero is actually to get to a year one, so that we have a strategic plan that's outlined. What we're hoping for is at least a 3-year outline of specific strategic goals that we can look at across the campus, particularly that we can take different metrics throughout to see our improvement in all those goals. And that the way that we're hoping to build to that is essentially that we want to create essentially short term, 3 years being an essentially short term, to maybe 5 years term plan that says, hey, we're going to look at different populations, we're going to have different goals. We're broadly stealing from our peer institutions who've done such things already. So we're looking at peer institutions within our state, but we're also looking at some of the larger institutions, like Portland Community College has a great strategic plan. So does Edmonds Community College. So do a bunch of them. So we're looking at a bunch throughout the region, hoping that we create essentially a set of between 4 and 6 strategic goals for the campus to follow across, that each department is aware of them, contributes to them, and looks at ways that they can support the college in them. So one of the ways that we are looking at building the strategic plan, and the reason it's called a year zero, is that the administration did not want to issue a plan saying, here are our priorities and here is what we must do. What instead they wanted to do was take hold of all of our stakeholders and say, what do you think we should do? What expertise do you have in this? Where can you give us guidances that that an administrator may not have anywhere near as much information about different elements of your department that you do. And so they're looking at this as a way to strengthen that. So the way that we were looking at building this strategic plan would be to have a series of very focused discussions for each of those groups, faculty senate, staff senate, and the small focus groups, and also utilizing a campus-wide online class that we're looking to build as a unified place of information and feedback. But essentially we'd look at it, and that each month of the year and in 2021 would have a focused set of discussions saying, here's a group of feedback, here's a group of research, here's a group of questions. Consider them in your contemplative bodies and give us feedback back as to what it is. So as we've been talking about it, we looked at things like this one. Hey, what are the feedback channels that we could establish across campus that would be easiest for people to use and most efficacious? And that February might be student obstacles, March might be professional obstacles. And essentially we're looking at creating an idea lab that would essentially create these categories, this research on the question, so that it wouldn't just come from me or the administration, that anyone who has wished to sculpt the discussions would have a voice in that. And that from that, we would be able to pull from all of those different aspects until we could get back to something that looked quite similar to the other peer institutions, a set of 6 goals or so that target specific people for each year, target specific metrics for each year, lay out a specific set of agendas that each department could follow. We're hoping that we can coalesce all those ideas by putting them out in a really structured format for people then to have a wide and open discussion and bring them all back. So that is the large master plan of that year 0, is to say, hey, if we give people time and preparation, saying we'll carve out time for this discussion and we give you research for this discussion, then the discussions are most likely to be fruitful. And then hopefully, as we come right back to the project governance coordinator, that their role would be to collect all that and serve as a conduit back and forth between them. As a whole, this is not like something we came up with on our own. We really did research other peer institutions to see how did they pull that off? How did they get, campus-wide stakeholder investment in a plan that would go throughout years, and how do they make sure that people understand it, use it, and actually participate in it? So as we created it, we did actually steal from pretty smart people, just so everybody knows. wasn't my own creation, but I would love to have a discussion on that. Do you think that would be an effective way for us, utilizing the senates, utilizing small groups, utilizing a set of discussion questions and mashing them together? Do you think we could get to there?
Amy, I like your approach now that you've laid it out like that. From my past experience with strategic planning, the plan is just the plan in the end. It's the process that probably provides the greatest benefit, if nothing else, for people communicating what their ideas are. And I like your approach of taking a different topic every month and then integrating it together in the very end. So it's not like just the brain power of the college goes off and does this on a weekend or something.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think it takes time to develop it, and Cal, mostly I think it takes friendship to develop it. You have to see your peers and create friendships across the departments to actually get any of that accomplished. Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else have comments on it?
I was curious, Amy, if in your peer reviews of other facilities or institutions, do they have as this model that you had cleverly disguised as being borrowed or shared? Do they have a position in the governance coordinator, or is it a team or a committee or any models?
That I wasn't sure. Like this model, we actually, again, pretty much stole, John, just so you know. I laid our own little boxes on top of it, but it is actually just in development, this chart. But we stole it from the Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions, and they do have a specific coordinator. But like at a college like Edmonds, which has, I think, a couple 100,000 students, I would guess that those coordinations are much bigger. at colleges like Rocky Mountain University is actually quite small, so they could have quite small. So it just varies mostly on size, like how many people are they trying to coordinate. But I'm with you that that one needs to be key. And here's a question for you all to ponder on. The members of PAC have volunteered several different ways that they would help support these. So here, let me jump ahead to that for just a second, and then we can discuss them a little more in depth. That the possible feedback channels that they talked about, one of them is administrative office hours, so that all of the major department heads would have an open office hour. I almost got that. Each some particular time frame, so that you could drop into Byron's office virtually or not virtually and ask. Yeah, Byron's only a little bit afraid. Yeah. Okay, so they talked about doing that as just an open forum, so you don't have to feel intimidated, you have to ask for an appointment, you just drop in when you wish. Okay, so we're going to run through them and then we're going to talk about them in a little more depth. Again, the things we talked about, having everyone have a campus-wide online class that it takes about 15 minutes a week, that you get to meet different people across campus with like a little video, a little quiz, and a little thing saying, hey, we're working on this problem, does anybody have suggestions? So just a place to give some online feedback in one consistent place. The big groups participate in the faculty and staff senate, small groups, focus groups like that. And then if you wanted to actually set the discussions, you join me and see it on that. So as they're talking about, different ways that we could structure that and different ways that you could get feedback from different people. So like for administrative office hour, the other thing I forgot, now that I look at my list, I forgot to say, PAC actually is willing to send themselves or a representative to faculty senate or staff senate or student senate in order to show that they're supportive of it and to give feedback on it. My question as I thought about it is the debate aided by having PAC in it? Would the debate be hindered by having a PAC member in it? Should we experiment both directions and see whether or not that's a benefit or not? So what do you guys think?
Amy, on that one, I just think there might be a little bit of pushback for certain issues because a lot of the time it's this, even people who manage other people aren't supposed to go to the staff senate, so that way people who aren't, I guess, in power, right? They don't have authority over others. Well, and it can be some, it just depends on the level of management. So PAC level, basically, because then they can feel free to bring things that otherwise maybe they're just either they don't want to offend or deter, or like nobody wants to be like, oh, I don't agree with this or this happened and I'm upset about it. And then fear of retribution, even if we're like retribution won't happen, there's no guarantee of that. And you can't make somebody who's like, what if I make Rick mad?
Yeah, I agree.
And that kind of thing, and that it wouldn't go back to them.
So they want to be able to speak freely.
Yes.
But so Amy, though, I think that if we just said that PAC members they're ready and willing if they're invited to attend the meeting. So
I think that would be better too, Byron.
Yeah, these groups could plan a particular meeting with the full intention that somebody from PAC would be there, and that gives a chance to have that dialogue. But
that has happened in the past for staff. We've had Mary has come from HR and to help with a discussion that involved some HR policy stuff too. So that way it wasn't a lot of, oh, I think this is how this goes. It was more of she wasn't taking over the conversation, but could more guide based on a policy procedure, that kind of thing. Like, this is how this runs, and then allow people to have their free dialogue without it being intrusive. But it was, I do believe she was invited to that one. So I just want feedback before. Some people have expressed that it would make them, that some things, that idea has made them uncomfortable. So.
One
but
thing
the same thing could go back the other way. So perhaps PAC could invite a representative from one of those groups into the PAC meeting for, a particular purpose. And so I think that if we're willing to exchange I don't know, representatives, if you will, either direction, that would help to open those channels.
Yeah, I was going to say that one thing Rick has done is try to meet regularly with, and perhaps we haven't got the cadence correct right yet, but with the staff Senate president, sometimes in conjunction with the vice president, and then also the faculty president, but maybe that needs to instead be, like you said, Byron, coming to the whole PAC meeting. I know we've been doing that this year. I say calendar, academic year. We haven't yet done it this calendar year. Rick's been meeting with them, but perhaps Amy, to better follow the model you're presenting here, it should be with all of PAC.
However, this occurred to me, and I don't know how you all feel about this, but is there, well, here it's just a question. Let's do it as a question first. Do we currently have a mechanism where faculty senate, staff senate, student senate prepare some kind of a report back to the president or this coordinator, which we don't have yet, but is there a formal process for reporting back, or is it just independent, totally independent? I don't know.
Well, we
Hey,
do
Jen,
have-
do you know? Because Jen's part of our Senate or our faculty. Or
Yeah, I was-
our staff. Sorry, I'm like wrong ones all the way around. She's part of our staff leadership.
Okay, and I'll have to admit, because we kind of came into this when COVID took over, the staff, Heather, you messed me all up.
I'm so sorry.
We've done our best to stay afloat, but it hasn't been a stellar year for us yet.
No worries.
But
You're afloat. You're afloat. It's enough right now.
but I think that I don't mean to like speak for everyone on staff senate, but I do believe that if we had some more structure in that way, that we'd appreciate it. Because sometimes I think you get this feeling that you're kind of just filling a spot because the college wants it. And we want to feel like we're useful.
For sure.
So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, when I talked
But as
to AA about it, he thought the same, that they wanted, certainly you want some time for just kind of a free flowing discussion that's not scripted, that people could bring problems of their own sorts. It shouldn't be all constructed, but that having some guided discussions contributing to the larger piece of the campus would be really satisfying for most people to say, and that would make the meetings themselves more satisfying if there were a little more direction. So I did promise that I could create a simple, like you could read it within 5 or 10 minutes total, pieces of, here's the research, here's the questions, and here's, the feedback, so that we could guide the feedback back there. That was the general take. Thank you.
One sort of, it's definitely not totally fulfilling what is being asked here, but currently for EC, we do have a faculty senate representative, and that role changes. That person changes rather. That's not the faculty senate president that necessarily comes. That person rotates. But anyway, someone from the faculty senate is invited to come to EC, and all members of PAC attend EC unless there's a conflict. So it's not that direct channel, but it is another way that there is information exchanged both ways.
True.
That is certainly one avenue. I think that there may be issues that come out of one of those groups that needs to be discussed in a more discreet way. So I think we also need that kind of a channel, so that if it's if it's an issue that needs to be covered more quietly, confidentially, but still be shared, that we have that can go to PAC, for example. So that's kind of where that coordinator, I think, Amy, it's a good point. That coordinator position is really critical. And as a group brings something to that coordinator, maybe they could declare how they think it should be handled. You know, who should it be disseminated to, the information? Should it go straight to the president? Can it go to PAC? Should it be shared with EC? Or, you know, should maybe just stay with HR? It depends. So part of the participation process would also be for them to be able to say what their expectations are for turning in a report and some information, and who should get it, and what level of confidentiality might be required for that information.
That definition, Byron, does that isolate the potential candidate for that position to a certain number of individuals? I'm just curious, based on the fact that we're talking about sometimes sensitivity is an issue from, I'll say, the right side towards the left side.
So
Does that mean
John,
that-
to
yes,
give
ma'am?
you an idea, like if things like that right now, if my position already deals with, so if we were worried about, I mean, Byron, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but like
I think you're wrong. No.
I in my position right now, as I participate in PAC and all those things, not that I'm advocating I need to take on all of these duties, but if we were to think of someone like a type of person, like I'm someone I think who already does, like, has those sensitivities, and so it would be someone similar, a
So we
position
can
similar
call this
to this.
position a Logan-like position?
Well, I think like coordinator might be the wrong term. Just I don't think we need to get into specifics, but in terms of like, anyway, we could get into that later. But someone like me is probably right, because a position like mine does deal with some of the sensitivities that Byron just described, but also some of like the trains of the college. So
Well, I hear you're clearly volunteering for this position. That's why.
I think
Careful,
you
Amanda,
need to check
careful.
your ear.
Yeah.
So don't talk, because you might talk yourself into it, Amanda.
Yeah.
But John, you make a good point. I think that, right, whoever that is has to be given the authority and the responsibility and the confidentiality to handle the issues that may come through that position.
And the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether it's a brand new position or whether somebody such as Amanda or somebody else has to carve out a little bit of their time and take on that assignment is yet to be determined.
And I think we could structure it. I might be optimistic, but my technical writing side of me says you could structure it in a way that passing that information back and forth would not be incredibly time consuming for any of the people. That you could create simple, you know, Microsoft forms and things that help people just even take notes as they go through the meeting itself, that they can transfer. I mean, I do think we can think through a few different ways to make that process less painful for whomever is in that position, and even a little more neutral, so that the governance coordinator isn't shaping the information, that the Senate and the, you know, gets to shape it directly. So I do think all those things are quite technologically and technically possible to minimize the strain on people for that.
I think
So
you're
one
absolutely
thing
right.
that I'm
You're
sure
perfect
Amanda
for the job.
would agree with this, but I could see that this position ends up, if we're not careful about how we set it up, could end up being the listing post, the counselor. So someone brings an issue and they want to sit down and talk about it. And we'd have to make it clear that this person just gathers the information. It should be documented. And then with the help of the person that's bringing it, they decide where it gets disseminated, so that that person doesn't get tied up in these long discussions about what the problem is and, you know, and all of that stuff. It needs to be more formalized. Right, Amanda?
Yeah, I think that's something in how you hire for the position. So I think there's a way to hire for that.
I agree. And just thoughtful of it. But I agree with you. It has kind of loaded connotations in both directions that we want to make sure that we're very careful in how that is structured. People mostly just even that there is a small amount of therapy in there by run for people to have a place to go discuss their issues, feel heard, and then have them clarified at a level that someone could actually take action. That part is actually, I think, one of the trickier parts of dealing with it is actually helping people shape it to the point where it's actionable. And you're right that should rest with the person who begins the discussion and then coordinates with other people as it moves along, but that they should feel ownership in that. So we'll take careful care of it. So definitely this position, I don't know that I thought about the octagon on that chart anywhere near as much as I probably should have based on this discussion.
Make it an oval.
Yeah, just a small like circle, yeah, squiggle that moves across the screen. Try to catch it.
A lightning bolt.
A lightning bolt. Kind of coming back to the other ways that we talked about increasing feedback back from the administration back down to that. One of the ways that we talked about is having PAC actually talk more formally about their agenda items before and their decisions after. They had talked about releasing them in Rick's weekly updates as a way to let people just stay informed of the decisions as they're coming up and as the decisions are made. Is there any other way that people could see that we should be passing information back down the chain instead of just focusing on the upward ways? Anyone have suggestions on that?
We've talked about a website many times, and I think if we could get that set up properly, the minutes and they would have to be redacted at different points, but the minutes could be posted, and anybody then could go and see them, and that would be at every level. You know, each of the groups would have their space where they could post their minutes and redact what needed to be redacted, but otherwise have the minutes.
That's a good call. When we actually kind of left the description of the administrative office hours. I wanted to come back to that for a second. Even just the PAC is totally willing. All the members of PAC were totally willing. They just wanted guidance from other people as to how often is that useful. Would once a week, once a month? If we had finance go the first week and academics go the second, or would it be better if everyone just had their own hour? Does anyone have any thoughts on how that would be most useful, or is that useful? Would you use it?
I'd like to add a little bit about that, just on the fact that for me personally, that wouldn't seem as beneficial to me as other options like bullet 2 perhaps. But I see office hours as an invitation to, open up a lot of different possibilities. By that I mean, you're going to bend somebody's ear for a bit, and there's going to be possibly just a venting session. And if there is a little bit more proactive instead of reactive situation involved, we might get a lot more out of it. I don't know, it's not my first go-to, so I was a little bit hesitant because I was just thinking about what if it was me and I had the open door policy? Who would be coming in? What would I be talking about? What am I saddling myself with? Who do I go with it for? And there's so much in a range of possibilities there. It just seemed daunting to me.
Any other thoughts? Thank you, John.
I don't want to be taking too much time because I'd like to hear other comments, but I will just say this. One of the problems with setting a specific time is that you might automatically eliminate certain people whose schedules don't match up with that time frame. So if a faculty member has to teach when I have an open office time, then I've eliminated them from ever coming in to talk to me. So maybe we could be a little bit more flexible, or maybe we could just, I have administrative assistant. Anybody can schedule time with me, and they do. Now they do. They can go through Emma, schedule some time, sit down with me and talk about anything that they need to discuss relative to the college. So
I think one of the things that struck me as I've been on this campus is how often administration does welcome comments, and half the conversations that I've actually just taken people up on that. I assume that you legitimately offer it and go get it. So just I do think that's a sincere offer across campus. We're just mostly, is it useful to formalize it, or do you think people take advantage of that enough, even if there's no formal structure to drop in on?
okay, if you pause too long, I'm going to talk. Sorry. So you got to speak up, people. Sometimes we do have, I mentioned this the other day with Amy when we were talking, which is, let's see, it's not Jabber, but Yammer, Microsoft Yammer. And if a person's question is not personal and kind of generic, and maybe something that everybody would like to know the answer on, they just happen to be the one to ask the question. It could be addressed in Yammer. They could ask the question, a response could be given, and everyone would benefit from the answer, the question and the answer. And it's all right there. If they choose to go look at it, it's right there. Now, obviously, there will be other things that are more private, not secret, but don't need a lot of dissemination across the campus, and that needs to handle a different way. But
I think, yeah, that's a great open option. And Canvas, as we build the online class, that might also offer, it also has portals that are kind of like it, that we might combine them all together. It's mostly, to me, those kind of portals are mostly, we need to get people aware of them and connected to them in some kind of way. But we often have portals where you can make suggestions, just people don't know that they're there, or they're too hard, or they didn't remember it when they had them. But as I listened to keynote speaker today, I thought, I did wish everybody across campus kept a question journal, and kept a place where they're like, hey, if I reached out to the Hispanic community in this way instead of the way we're doing it, we could hit that group better. Or if, just as you're wandering through the world, as you're interacting with employers and friends and different people, to go having a place to gather all those ideas from a faculty and staff perspective are as important as the students. Hopefully we all have a lot of questions that we all keep asking. But I have been very impressed as I've moved through this process of how many people who are in positions of administration are very open to hearing all of that, and wish they heard all of that, and wish they knew the ideas that were flowing through the campus. And so we're just really are looking for different ways to build that, and that they're willing to invest time and effort into that. Probably just a little money, Byron. I'm just going to say time and effort with a little bit of money. Yeah. just
I was going to ask you.
Say that
I'm
again.
sorry.
No, I didn't hear
I was
it.
going to ask you, I had never heard of Yammer before, and when Byron mentioned it, I thought, okay, great. I've never heard of this. I'm open to anything in technology that's going to serve us. But in the same mind, I looked at a comment from Jennifer Lopez that said, could we use the hub as a part of an avenue for this? And I thought, well, if we use the hub for that, why couldn't we open up a forum that would be an awful lot like the Yammer, and have it, talk to an individual that doesn't really exist? Somebody's going to be answering that issue, but it's a faceless entity they can just put questions to, and then that entity could reroute that question to whoever was responsible for a response. I don't know, just an idea, but I like the idea of a forum and a hub that everybody can review. I don't know if Yammer is open to everybody, because I'm not familiar with it at all, but I certainly like the idea.
John, it is. But the nice thing about it is you can create groups so that you can kind of stay focused with the smaller group. I think you can even have one-on-one conversations within Yammer. I could be wrong, but I think you can. So it can be open to it. And the thing about Yammer is that it's within the CEI community only. So it's not open to the public. So we keep it within our own group. And you can create these rooms or groups that focus it even further. And then again, you can have kind of one-on-one types of conversations. So It's pretty flexible that way. And we just, as you said, we need to get the word out that it's there and use it. It's part of the Microsoft suite of products.
We'll definitely have to experiment. And we're now at 2:50, so I've gotten to pick your brain, I guess, as much as I get to today. Thank you very much for dropping into this session and for giving me your feedback. If you are the slightest bit interested in joining me as we sculpt these discussions, yell right now. We're going to send out a formal invitation too, but if this sounds interesting to you to help shape the strategy for the campus and you win in it, please tell me that you're interested. And we'll keep asking for different ways to get your brains on this, because I am deeply impressed by the brains on this campus. So thanks for letting me have yours. See you guys. Enjoy the next session.